Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I'm not really the kind of person who posts on forums or shares weird stories, but what happened to me back in 2022 still messes with my head. At the time, I was living alone in a small one-bedroom apartment in Tacoma, Washington. I'd just gone through a rough breakup. My work-from-home contract had ended and my sleep schedule was completely out of whack. Spent most nights scrolling through threads on obscure forums, the kind of places that felt like digital graveyards. Old posts, broken links, usernames that hadn't been active in years. It gave me a weird kind of comfort, I guess. Like I was surrounded by people who were just as aimless as I was. That night started like any other. It was close to 2:30 a.m. I was lying in bed with my laptop resting on my chest, clicking through a thread called Things You're Not Supposed to See. Most of the links were dead ends or led to grainy videos that were probably staged. But one comment caught my attention, not because of what it said, but because it had an active countdown. Just a black box with white numbers ticking down. 12:07 when I first saw it. No title, no description, just another user replying, "Watch it to the end if you're brave." I hovered for a second. Curiosity got the better of me. When the countdown hit 0, the screen cut to static for a few seconds. Then it faded into a live feed, definitely not pre-recorded, because I could see the chat updating in real time. The video showed a dimly lit warehouse or maybe a garage. Fluorescent lights flickered above, and the camera was fixed in place, angled toward a person sitting in a metal chair. They were tied up, hands behind their back, duct tape over their mouth, head hanging forward like they were unconscious or sedated. The chat exploded with movement. Hundreds of users watching, reacting, typing things like "fresh one," "looks weak," 10 minutes max. At first I thought it was some kind of ARG or sick prank, but something about it felt too raw. The lighting, the breathing sounds picked up by the mic, the subtle twitch of the person's fingers. It was too real. Then a line of text popped up at the top of the screen. "Place your bet. How long will they last?" People were typing in numbers. 10 minutes. 20. Some were saying under 5. Others joked they'd seen worse. And then the camera started to shift just slightly, like someone was behind it, adjusting the angle. It panned a few inches to the right, where there was a tall metal shelf with some tools, and mounted beside it was a dusty mirror. The reflection in that mirror showed something I wasn't prepared for. For maybe a second or two, clear as day, I saw the image of my own room. My desk, my lamp, my bed. Exactly how it looked that night. I froze. At first, I didn't even trust what I'd seen. I blinked hard and rewound the stream, trying to catch the frame again, but the mirror shot had already passed and the camera was now locked back on the person in the chair. My heart was pounding, like the kind of panic you feel when you realize your front door's been unlocked all night. I sat up, stared around my room, half expecting to find a camera lens tucked in a corner or peeking through the vents. But there was nothing. Everything looked normal. I even turned my laptop toward the wall, like that would somehow shield me. I typed in the chat, asking what the hell that was, if anyone else saw the reflection. My comment was instantly buried. The chat was moving too fast. People just kept placing bets, laughing, throwing in emojis and inside jokes. It was like no one else had seen what I saw. Or worse, maybe they did, and they were just used to it. The person in the chair was awake now. Their head was up, their eyes wide. They looked like a teenager, maybe early 20s. Could have been anyone. The way they kept shifting in the seat made me sick, like they were trying to stay still, trying not to breathe too loud. I clicked out of the tab, shut everything down, and literally unplugged my router. I know how that sounds, paranoid, but it felt like the stream was watching me more than I was watching it. I stayed up until sunrise, pacing around the apartment, checking behind furniture, inside closets. At one point, I grabbed a steak knife from the kitchen and kept it in my hand, just in case. Nothing happened. No sounds, no knocks. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had seen me. Not just seen me. recognized me. The next day, I tried talking to a buddy of mine about it, Eli, the only friend I still talk to regularly. He's a programmer, super logical, doesn't believe in anything unless it runs on code. I told him what I saw, expecting him to laugh it off, but he didn't. He just went really quiet. Then he asked for the URL. I sent him a screenshot of the countdown page before it went live. A couple hours later, he texted me, "This page doesn't exist anymore. The domain's gone. No DNS record, no archived version." He told me it looked like a burner domain, something meant to disappear the moment it served its purpose. And then he sent one last message that made my stomach drop. "Bro, that screenshot? There's something in the corner of your window." I zoomed in on the screenshot and nearly dropped my phone. In the corner of my bedroom window, barely visible through the half-closed blinds, was the outline of a face. Not detailed, not sharp, but the shape was unmistakable. A nose, a mouth, eyes. Looking in from the darkness outside, it wasn't there when I took the screenshot. At least I didn't see it then. I ran to the window and yanked the blinds up. Nothing. Just the alley behind my building. Empty like always. I live on the 3rd floor. No balcony. No fire escape. There's no way anyone could have stood there, but I couldn't unsee it. That shape was there. I didn't sleep that night either. I kept every light on, even the ones in the kitchen and bathroom. I tried calling Eli, but he didn't pick up. The live stream site was gone for good. Every attempt to revisit it led to a dead page. No trace it ever existed. I even went back to the forum, scrolled through my browser history. Everything. No mention of the thread, no cache, no username who'd posted the link. It was like it had been scrubbed, surgically. And yet I had the screenshot, the countdown, the reflection, the face, my room. The last weird thing happened a few days later. I was cleaning out my inbox when I noticed a draft email saved that I didn't remember typing. It had no subject, just a few lines of text. "I saw you watching. You made your choice. Don't pretend you didn't." It was addressed to no one. Sitting in my drafts, no sent message. I never wrote it. Never even opened a new message that day. I deleted it immediately, but I still check my drafts folder every couple of days like I'm waiting for another one to show up. Nothing ever has. But that's the kind of thing you don't forget. That sentence, that tone, it felt personal. Eventually I moved. Got a new laptop, switched ISPs, even changed my number. It's been over a year now and nothing else has happened. No more countdowns, no more faces. But I never leave my blinds open at night anymore. I can't. And I haven't watched a single live stream since. I know how all this sounds, like I lost it for a while. But here's the thing. I know what I saw. I know that was my room in the mirror. So if anyone ever sends you a link with a countdown and no title, don't watch it, please, for your own sake. Back in late 2021, I was freelancing full-time as a graphic designer, mostly doing small branding projects and video edits for startups that never lasted more than a few months. I was living alone in a tiny second-floor studio apartment in Tucson, Arizona. Just me, my cat Felix, and my overworked laptop. Business had slowed down and my savings were drying up quicker than I expected. I wasn't proud of it, but I'd started browsing more obscure job boards, some of them floating in the darker corners of the web. They were anonymous, usually sketchy, but occasionally offered decent money for simple, no-questions-asked gigs. One night, I came across a listing on a forum called Iron Packet. The post was vague but paid $700 for minor anonymization of digital footage. I messaged the contact. It was a generic handle, Midnight Sync. They responded almost immediately, sent over a Dropbox link to the footage, and instructed me to blur the faces in all 5 camera angles, maintain the timestamps, and render it back in black and white. They even specified what codec to use. I asked no questions. I'd done similar things before, sometimes for independent filmmakers, sometimes for private investigators. This just felt colder. But again, I needed the money. The footage was odd. It showed grainy security cam views of what looked like a rundown motel parking lot at night. There were 3 people involved, 2 dragging what appeared to be a limp body wrapped in a rug, and a third standing by a beat-up gray Dodge Charger, constantly looking over his shoulder. No audio, no color, just dull flickering black and white images and the ticking time code in the bottom right corner. I hesitated for a second, but I kept telling myself it was probably a prank video or a dramatization, maybe even staged. I'd seen worse on Reddit threads, so I did the job, blurred the faces, cleaned up the footage, exported, zipped, and sent it back. About an hour later, I got a ping, payment received. But instead of the usual quiet confirmation, Midnight Sync sent a second message. Thanks. Your hands just cleaned up a murder. I remember staring at that message for a long time, my hand hovering over the mouse like my brain was trying to reboot. I even laughed out loud for a second. Nervous laugh, the kind where your stomach drops but your mouth doesn't get the memo. I replied with just a question mark, but they never answered. The account was deleted within minutes. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the footage in my head, trying to catch something I missed. The way the rug sagged when they carried it. The size of the dark stains spreading onto the asphalt. The fact that none of them ever looked directly at any of the cameras, as if they knew exactly where they were placed. Around 3 a.m., I got up and checked the files again, zoomed in frame by frame. Nothing new stood out, but I couldn't shake the cold, metal taste in my mouth. I started feeling like I'd become part of something I wasn't supposed to see. And I knew, deep down, that message wasn't a joke. The next morning, I turned on the TV while making coffee, mostly for background noise. I wasn't even paying attention until I heard the name of a motel, Sycamore Pines Motor Lodge, and dropped my mug. It shattered on the floor, but I didn't care. On the screen was the exact same footage I'd edited the night before. Same parking lot, same timestamp, same movements. Except this time, the footage was slightly different. The faces were still blurred. Not my blur, though. Whoever released it had done their own masking. The news anchor described the case as a suspected homicide involving organized crime. No suspects yet. Public asked to come forward. I froze. My hands were shaking. It wasn't just the video being shown. It was the detail I couldn't unsee. The body in the rug had a small charm bracelet dangling from the edge, visible in one of the last frames. I hadn't noticed it before, but now I couldn't unsee it. Pink beads and a little silver heart. Something personal. That was a real person. Someone who probably had a name, a family. I started feeling sick, like truly nauseous. I went back to the folder I'd downloaded the footage into, but the original file had vanished. Not just deleted, vanished. Not in my recycle bin, no trace. That freaked me out even more. I know I didn't delete it. I checked my remote logs and system activity, but it showed nothing. My antivirus didn't ping, but that didn't mean much. If someone had the skill to wipe my local files without detection, they knew what they were doing. I started wondering if they could still access my system. I pulled my Ethernet cable out, turned off Wi-Fi, and sat there in silence, watching Felix pace nervously around the edge of the window like he sensed something I couldn't see. Every creak in the building suddenly sounded like footsteps. Every car door slamming outside made me jump. That afternoon, I drove out to a coffee shop I used to work at just to use their Wi-Fi and breathe somewhere public. I sat in a corner booth with my laptop, trying to find any trace of that iron packet post. The thread was gone, not deleted, like it had never existed. I searched the username. Nothing. I even checked archived versions of the site through the Wayback Machine, but it was like the job was never posted. That only made it worse. It wasn't just a one-off sketchy client. Someone had deliberately found me, chosen me, used me, and now it was being covered up. 2 days later, someone slid an unmarked envelope under my door while I was in the shower. No knock, no sound, just silence. Inside was a single USB stick and a note that said, "This is what happens to people who ask questions." That's it. No name, no symbol. I didn't even plug it into anything. I still don't know what was on it. I walked it 3 blocks down to an alley with a dumpster behind a tire shop and smashed it to pieces with a brick. Then I walked into the store next door, bought a burner phone, and spent the rest of the day wiping my computer and reinstalling everything from scratch. I stopped taking freelance gigs after that, switched to an in-house job at a design firm where I could sit in a well-lit office surrounded by other people. I still think about that video sometimes, especially that bracelet. I wonder who she was, if her family ever got closure, if the edited footage I made was ever used to throw off the investigation. Sometimes I wonder if the version on the news was edited by someone else after me, or if maybe I was the one who erased something they needed. I'll never really know. That's the part that eats at me the most. I've told a few close friends over the years, always with the caveat that I might have just been a paranoid freelancer who got caught up in something I didn't understand. But when I think about the way the footage disappeared, the silence from the client, and that USB stick, I know this wasn't random. Someone made sure I played my part, and they made damn sure I stayed quiet. So yeah, maybe don't take gigs from anonymous clients on forums that disappear overnight. Especially if they're asking you to erase faces from something that looks too real to be fiction. I was 19 when this happened, visiting my aunt and uncle in upstate New York during spring break. I'd just started my second semester of college, trying to catch up on some readings for my psych class while getting away from the noise of the city. They live in one of those older houses that creak for no reason, with patchy internet and spotty cell reception, so I wasn't expecting to get much done. My cousin Ethan had just turned 17 and spent most of his time locked in his room gaming or editing weird videos. He let me borrow his old laptop since I didn't bring mine, said it was slow but fine for typing. I should have just brought a notebook and studied the old-fashioned way. The laptop was crusty as hell, stickers half peeled off, missing keys, screen covered in smudges. But it booted up, and that's all I needed. I was maybe 20 minutes into highlighting some dry article about human behavior when I got bored and started poking around the laptop. Ethan's desktop was a mess of random files. Folders labeled memes, don't open, MP4 lol, and one that stood out, archive streams. I figured it was just old Twitch recordings or something dumb he saved. But when I opened it, inside was just a single HTML file with a date string as the title. It was that day's date, literally today. That felt odd enough to click. The file opened in a browser tab and the screen went black for a second. Then grainy footage began to play. Looked like a live stream, kind of like a home security camera feed. But the quality was awful, jittery and pixelated, with this faint red light flickering off screen. It showed a guy, maybe in his 30s, tied to a metal chair in a concrete basement. His head was down, and his arms were bound with zip ties. The camera didn't move. It was fixed in one spot like it was mounted high in a corner. At first, I assumed it was some kind of horror project Ethan was working on, maybe a fake ARG or something. The guy looked sweaty and scared, but I figured he was acting. Then I noticed 2 things that made my stomach flip. First, in the bottom corner of the screen, the timestamp showed today's date and the exact time, down to the minute. I stared at it, then checked my phone. It was live. Second, and this is the part that still messes me up, behind the guy on the back wall there was a whiteboard. Scrawled in red marker, like it had been written in a rush, was a long string of numbers. It took me a second to realize it was an IP address. My IP address. I knew it was mine because I'd just looked it up earlier that morning trying to troubleshoot their internet. It was mine, down to the last digit. I just sat there, frozen. You know when your brain can't quite process what's happening so it tries to rationalize it? That's what I did. I told myself it had to be some kind of prank. Maybe Ethan was screwing with me. Maybe the video was pre-recorded and he somehow edited the IP as a joke. But that made no sense. He had no idea I'd be using his laptop, let alone that I'd open that specific folder. Plus, there was no sign of editing. The feed was glitchy, yes, but it was constant, real time. The man on the screen kept glancing toward something off camera, his whole body tensing up like he was waiting for someone to come back into the room. I closed the tab, but it didn't really close. It minimized, then popped back up again in a new browser window. I tried shutting the browser. Nothing happened. Control plus Alt plus Del didn't work either. Then the speakers let out this high-pitched static, and I swear I could hear something beneath the noise. Like whispers. Fast and layered, like a dozen people murmuring at once in a language I didn't recognize. My palms were sweating. I yanked the charger out of the laptop, slammed it shut, and just sat there, heart pounding like it was going to burst. But I couldn't shake it. I needed to know what the hell I had just seen. I went to Ethan's room and knocked. No answer. I knocked again, louder. I could hear something playing on his speakers. Metal music, maybe? I opened the door just a crack and he was there, headset on, totally zoned out in some game. I asked if he was playing a prank on me. He pulled off one side of his headset, gave me that classic teenage, "What are you even talking about?" look, and said he hadn't touched the laptop in months. I pressed him, asked about the archive streams folder. He squinted at me, confused, then just shrugged and said, "I don't remember making that, maybe one of my friends did." He sounded completely genuine. I didn't want to push more, so I just mumbled something about homework and went back downstairs. When I opened the laptop again, against every part of my better judgment, the stream was still running. Same room, same man, still tied to the chair. Only now the camera angle had changed. I didn't even think that was possible. It had shifted lower, closer, like someone had moved it manually. The man was looking straight into the lens now, his mouth shaking like he was trying to say something but couldn't. That's when I realized he wasn't just staring into the camera. He was staring at me. I leaned in instinctively like I could somehow read his eyes, and I swear to God there was something behind them. This silent plea, this desperate panic, like he knew I could see him and needed me to do something. That was the most disturbing part. Not the blood on his lip or the bruises on his wrists, but the fact that he looked like he knew me. Like this wasn't random. Like I had been chosen to see this. My chest tightened. I looked down at the browser again. A new message had appeared just beneath the video, in red blinking text. Viewer 12 connected. I didn't even know what that meant. Were there others watching this too? I scanned the page. No chat box. No pause or rewind buttons. No way to click or interact with anything. Just the feed, the timestamp, the blinking viewer count, and that damn IP on the whiteboard still there like a signature. I reached for my phone to call someone, anyone, but there was no signal. I tried my aunt's landline. Dead. That made no sense. I went to the living room to check the router. It was on, lights blinking normally. My cousin was still upstairs online, yelling into his headset like nothing was wrong. But for me, every screen, every attempt to get help was dead weight. I don't know what came over me, but I went back to the laptop and typed into the address bar, trying to escape the stream by manually entering YouTube, Google, anything. Nothing worked. Every attempt just refreshed back to the same page. Then the video glitched, froze for half a second and came back, but now the man was gone. The chair was still there, the restraints dangling loose, and a trail of something, blood or water, I couldn't tell, led off screen. I leaned closer. That's when I noticed something I wish I hadn't. The whiteboard had been erased. In its place, now in all caps, was a new message written in thick, rushed strokes. "Do not look away." I remember whispering to myself, "What the hell is this?" Like saying it out loud would help ground me. But I couldn't stop watching. The camera just sat there, unmoving, showing this empty basement with that awful red glow. The longer I stared, the more I felt like something was watching me. Like the stream wasn't just a feed I'd stumbled onto, but a two-way mirror. And then, out of nowhere, a figure passed by in the very back of the frame. Just a silhouette. No face, no features. Just this slow, gliding movement, like it was pacing. Waiting. I shut the laptop again. Hard, like that would somehow make it stop. I didn't even unplug it this time. I just grabbed my stuff, left it sitting there on the dining table, and walked out the front door. I didn't tell Ethan or my aunt and uncle anything. I walked 4 blocks to the gas station just to be around other people, to get a signal on my phone. And when I finally did, I looked up the IP address, just to see if I was imagining it. It came up as a residential network in my aunt's neighborhood. Mine. There was no way to make sense of it. No forum or subreddit had anything like what I'd seen. And every time I tried to revisit the link, it redirected to a dead archive page. When I got back to the house an hour later, Ethan was still gaming, totally unaware. The laptop was shut and idle like nothing ever happened. I asked him one more time about the folder, and he seemed genuinely confused. He offered to wipe the drive for me, said it probably had a virus. I let him. But even after he wiped it, even after the folder was gone, I still felt like I was being watched. Not in the dramatic horror movie way, but in the subtle way where you start noticing small things. The way a webcam reflects light when it shouldn't, or the sound of static when nothing's turned on. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that whiteboard, that phrase, "Do not look away." I started wondering, was it a warning to the man or to me? Like if I turned away, something would happen, something worse than watching. For a few days, I couldn't use any screen without feeling sick. I covered my laptop's camera with tape. I unplugged my Echo Dot. I even put my phone in the drawer at night. Maybe it sounds paranoid, but once you feel like a screen has looked back at you, you never look at a screen the same way again. It's been almost a year now. Nothing else has happened. I haven't seen that stream again, and Ethan eventually sold the laptop for parts. But every once in a while, late at night, I'll open a browser and feel this weird tension crawl up my spine, like I'm being pulled somewhere I'm not supposed to go. I still don't know if what I saw was real or some kind of elaborate digital trap, but I'll never forget the look in that man's eyes, staring through the screen like I was his last chance. And I'll never, ever forget that message. Do not look away. I'm not the kind of guy who usually talks about this kind of stuff online. I work in IT, I keep my head down, and I mind my own business. But something happened to me 2 years ago that I still can't make sense of. And even now, I sometimes wake up sweating, feeling phantom pain in the hand I don't like looking at anymore. Back then, I was living in St. Paul, Minnesota, working remote contract jobs and flipping crypto on the side. I wasn't rich, but I was smart with my money. Too smart, apparently, to get scammed. Or so I thought. Around April, I got involved in some gray market trading on a site that mimicked the old Silk Road setup. One of those hidden services buried in the Tor network, full of people who call themselves vendors like it's a damn farmer's market. I was looking to buy a rare security exploit, not for anything illegal, just a tool I needed to test a client's infrastructure. The vendor went by the name Nullforge. His page looked legit, hundreds of reviews, all glowing. The listing said delivery within 72 hours. I paid in Bitcoin around $1,300 at the time. Then, nothing. 3 days turned into 5, 5 into 8. He ghosted me completely. So, being the stubborn idiot I am, I left a detailed post on a security board warning others about him. I broke down the scam, the timing, even posted the wallet address he used. The post got traction. A few other people replied saying they'd been scammed by Nullforge too. I figured maybe I helped someone avoid getting burned. I moved on. Until a week later, Friday night, I left work late around 9 p.m. I was walking the usual path back to my apartment, this quiet street near West 7th. I remember stopping at the corner store to grab a drink, texting my buddy Drew that I'd be on for Call of Duty in 30. That's the last clear memory I have. When I woke up, I was on the floor of what looked like a basement or warehouse. Cold concrete, low ceiling, flickering strip lights. My head was pounding. My wrists were zip-tied and there was blood on the floor. A lot of it. My left hand felt like it was dipped in acid. I looked down and started screaming. 2 of my fingers, my ring and pinky, were gone. Clean. Like someone had taken bolt cutters to them. I couldn't even process it. My mouth was taped, my legs bound at the ankles. I started kicking, crying through my nose, panic flooding me so fast I nearly blacked out again. I don't know how long I was stuck there, but it felt like a lifetime. There were no windows, no clocks, just that relentless hum from the light above and the sharp, bitter smell of something chemical. Maybe bleach, maybe blood. I faded in and out, probably from the shock or blood loss. Sometimes I'd hear footsteps overhead, slow and deliberate, like whoever took me wanted me to know they were still around. Once, I swear I heard whistling. It wasn't a tune I recognized, just a low, off-key melody, like someone trying to mimic a song they only half remembered. I never saw a face, not even once. At some point, maybe 2 days later, maybe 3, I was dumped outside a loading dock in an industrial part of town, barely conscious, wrapped in a blue moving blanket like a broken appliance someone didn't want anymore. A trucker found me, called 911. I remember the paramedics trying to keep me awake in the ambulance, one of them talking about possible shock trauma and clean severance. In the hospital, they kept asking if I'd been in contact with any dangerous individuals. I told them everything, about the darknet purchase, the scam, the post I made. The cops took notes, but it was clear they didn't really get it. One of them literally asked me, "You mean like hackers?" The weeks after were a blur. Physical therapy, psych evaluations, and the kind of dreams that make you afraid to close your eyes. My hand healed. Well, as much as it could. But the mental part didn't. I got paranoid. I moved out of my apartment, changed phones, numbers, emails. Quit every forum I was part of. I even sold off most of my crypto. I couldn't trust anything digital anymore. I kept thinking, what if they're watching? What if I triggered something bigger than just a scammer with a bruised ego? Then, about 5 months later, I got an anonymous message. Not on my phone, not email. It was a handwritten note, delivered inside a padded envelope. No return address. Just a single sentence on plain paper. We protect our own. Consider the balance settled. Along with it, on a USB drive, was a cold wallet, freshly generated. Inside it, the exact amount of Bitcoin I had originally lost, plus a little extra, like a tip. My first instinct was to throw it all away, pretend I never saw it. But I didn't. I still haven't touched the wallet. I check it sometimes, though, and every time I do, the balance is exactly the same. I kept that envelope locked in a drawer for weeks before I even dared look at it again. I kept replaying the timeline in my head, trying to figure out what part of this made sense. Who were they? Some rogue collective that punishes bad actors? Or was it a message from Null Forge himself, twisted as hell but framed like justice? The note didn't say, and the cops never found a single fingerprint on the package. I showed them everything, hoping maybe this was my closure. But they just shrugged. Said these kinds of people don't usually leave tip money. The scariest part is I think I was being watched for a while before the kidnapping. A week before it happened, my apartment buzzer went off twice in the middle of the night. No one there when I checked. I started finding my mailbox open, even when I swore I had locked it. Once I came home and found my cat locked in the bathroom, even though I never close that door when I'm gone. Little things, you know, the kind that chip away at your sense of reality until something finally breaks. I think that post I made pissed off the wrong kind of people. Not scammers, enforcers. I haven't been back on the dark web since. I barely even touch anything beyond basic online banking now. People online talk tough about whistleblowing and exposing scams, but I learned the hard way that not all criminals are disorganized or dumb. Some of them have systems, hierarchies, rules, and when you interfere, even if you're right, someone, somewhere, might be watching, might decide you need a lesson. Wasn't about the money, it was about sending a message. So yeah, that's my story. I still type weird because of the missing fingers, and loud buzzing lights make me nauseous. I haven't figured out who we is. I probably never will. But whatever game I stumbled into, I didn't even know the rules. I just know that someone out there thought I crossed a line, and then, when they were done proving their point, they refunded me. Like I was a transaction. Like I was nothing more than a bad investment that had been corrected. That's the part that really messes me up, because maybe, in their world, that was mercy. Back in 2019, I was 21, living in a small off-campus apartment just outside of Flagstaff, Arizona. I was in that post-high school phase where you're half functioning, half spiraling, riding on cheap beer, late-night YouTube holes, and just enough college credits to stay enrolled. That week I'd been experimenting with LSD for the first time. Not something I'm proud of, but I was curious, and frankly, kind of bored. It was a Friday night. I dropped a tab around 8 p.m., and by 10 I was melting into my mattress while scrolling deep corners of the internet that I probably had no business touching. Somewhere around hour 3 of my trip, I landed on a weird site linked through a forum post titled, something like "You won't believe what's real down here." The site itself looked like a joke, like some parody of a hitman service with memes sprinkled between the options. Stuff like pixelated cats holding rifles and drop-downs that asked things like, preferred method, piano wire, or banana peel. I was tripping hard, laughing at how ridiculous it was. My sense of judgment was basically non-existent at that point. So I filled out the form just for kicks. Name, mine, address, also mine, target, me. Under reason, I put, because I'm a dumbass. I hit submit, then laughed myself to sleep thinking I was the funniest guy on the planet. Waking up the next morning was like any post-trip haze. My apartment smelled like ramen and incense. My laptop was still open, battery dead. I didn't think twice about the form. I genuinely thought it was satire, like those dumb rent-a-snake prank sites. But 3 days later, a box showed up at my door. No return address, just brown packaging with my name scribbled in Sharpie. I assumed it was something I ordered and forgot about, so I didn't even hesitate. I opened it right there on my kitchen counter, one hand still holding a Pop-Tart. Inside was a cheap-looking burner phone and nothing else. No bubble wrap, no instructions. The screen was already on and a message blinked at the top. New image received. I remember feeling this weird drop in my gut, like my body knew something before my brain did. I tapped the screen and froze. The photo showed me sitting on my bed, eyes glazed, face half lit by the screen. It was me from 3 nights ago. Same shirt, same position, taken straight from the angle of my laptop webcam. At first I just stood there staring at the screen, trying to convince myself it was some kind of prank. But the timestamp on the photo matched the exact night I filled out that form, right down to the minute. I felt this slow, suffocating chill crawl up my neck. I looked over at my laptop, which had been sitting open on my desk that night. The webcam's little green light. I couldn't even remember if it had turned on. My hands started shaking, and I instinctively pulled a piece of tape off a takeout container and slapped it over the camera. Dumb, I know, but it made me feel slightly less exposed. I tried rationalizing it. Maybe the site was collecting data. Maybe it just took a screenshot. But the angle wasn't a screen capture, it was a literal photo of me, from outside the screen. The depth, the lighting, it was like someone had been watching me. I grabbed the burner phone again, hoping I'd imagined it. But the moment I touched the screen, a new message popped up. Never joke with contracts. That's when my heart really sank. It wasn't just a scare tactic. Someone had seen me, knew where I lived, knew what I looked like that night. I felt like I'd accidentally signed something I didn't understand. Like I'd invited something in. I didn't call the cops. I should have, I know. But how do you explain something like that? Hey officer, I filled out a joke hitman form on a meme site while I was high, and now someone's sending me photos of myself in the mail? They'd laugh, or worse, ask to see my browser history. So I did the only thing I could think of. I powered off every device I owned, shoved the burner phone into a shoebox, and drove an hour and a half to my cousin Blake's place in Prescott. I told him I was just coming to hang out for the weekend, but I barely slept. Every time a car passed the house or the AC kicked on, I jumped. My nerves were fried. Blake noticed something was off. He kept asking if I was in trouble or if I owed someone money. I told him no, but my eyes must have said otherwise. I remember sitting on his porch the second night, chain smoking in the dark, staring at the tree line across the street. I had this feeling, like someone was just out of sight, watching. I couldn't explain it. It wasn't logical, but it felt real. The next morning I drove back home, not because I felt brave, but because I had classes and a lease and a life to return to. But deep down I knew something had shifted. That apartment didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt penetrated. When I got back, the apartment was exactly how I'd left it. Lights off, blinds closed, dead silence. I stood in the doorway for a while before walking in. I couldn't explain why, but everything felt heavier. The air, the quiet. I didn't touch my laptop. I didn't even look at the shoebox with the burner phone. I just paced around the living room like an animal waiting for something to happen. And something did. That night, just after 2 a.m., my doorbell rang. One single chime. No knock, no footsteps. I froze on the couch, heart hammering so hard I thought I'd pass out. I didn't move for what felt like hours. Eventually, I worked up the courage to peek through the peephole. Nothing, no one. The hallway was empty, but taped to the outside of my door in the exact center was a sticky note. Just one sentence scrawled in all caps. "Contract voided, stay clever." That's all it said. No signature, no hint of who had been there or how they knew I was awake. I didn't sleep after that. I packed a bag, drove out of town before the sun came up, and crashed at a friend's place in Tempe for 2 weeks. I told them I needed to get away from my mental health, which wasn't a lie. Eventually, I moved out of that apartment, changed my number, wiped my devices. I even started using a VPN, got a new laptop, and physically removed the webcam. I haven't touched the deep web since, not even as a joke. I never told anyone the full story until now. Every once in a while, I'll catch myself checking corners, jumping at shadows. Nothing else ever happened. No more packages, no more messages. It just stopped. Like whoever or whatever it was had said what they needed to say. But sometimes, late at night, I still wonder how close they really were. If they were ever inside. If maybe the contract was only temporarily voided. And the scariest part? I don't think I was the first to do it, and I sure as hell won't be the last. I'm not proud of what I did, but back in 2019, I was in a rough place. My name's Trevor, I was 32 at the time, and I'd just moved to a small apartment complex in Akron, Ohio, after a bad breakup and a job layoff. My anxiety was eating me alive, and with no insurance. Seeing a doctor wasn't even an option. I'd tried writing it out naturally, but the panic attacks were getting worse, like full-body shutdowns where I couldn't breathe or think straight. That's when someone on a sketchy forum suggested I check out certain marketplaces on the deep web for meds. I wish I'd never followed that advice. The first time I bought something, I was shaking so hard I could barely type. I found a vendor selling anti-anxiety pills, stuff I'd been prescribed before. And the listings looked surprisingly polished. Reviews, ratings, even encrypted messaging. Against my better judgment, I placed a small order. A week later, the package showed up in my mailbox, discreetly packed, no issues. I took one pill, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. I told myself I'd just do this until I got back on my feet. But of course, things don't ever stop at just once. I placed 2 more orders over the next couple of months, both without a hitch. The seller, who went by Red Nerve Rex, even started messaging me directly. At first, it was simple check-ins. Did your package arrive on time? Or let me know if you need a refill. Then one day they sent a message saying I'd been selected for VIP access. Faster delivery, exclusive products, Guaranteed no customs interference. It sounded ridiculous, but the timing was eerie. I was about to run out again, and the offer came out of nowhere like they knew. I replied, "Sure," not thinking much of it, and they told me my VIP shipment would arrive in 48 hours. 2 days later, I found a small padded envelope in my mailbox. Same return address as before, same careful wrapping, but when I opened it in my kitchen, there weren't any pills inside, just a single sheet of paper, neatly folded. I remember feeling this cold drop in my stomach even before I read it. The note said, "Now we know where you live. You owe us for trust." That was it, nothing else. I froze. I just stood there, holding that paper like it might bite me. I didn't know what to think. Was it a joke, a warning, some kind of sick game? But something deep in my gut told me that whoever was behind it, they weren't joking. I spent the rest of that day spiraling. Every sound outside made me flinch. I kept checking the peephole, watching people come and go from the building like I'd never seen them before. I even taped over the camera on my laptop and powered off my phone. That night, I barely slept. I kept the light on in the hallway and sat on the edge of my bed, just listening. For footsteps, knocks, anything. The worst part was not knowing what "you owe us for trust" even meant. Were they expecting money? Silence? Something else? I didn't reply to the message thread. I didn't place another order. I just wanted it to go away. 3 days later, something else happened. I was coming back from the grocery store when I saw my landlord, Mr. Weaver, standing in the hallway by the utility closet near the stairwell. He's this older guy, probably in his 60s, always wearing a Cleveland Browns cap and chewing mints. He waved me over and said, "Hey, you haven't seen anyone messing with the breaker room, have you?" I said no and asked why. He told me that someone had apparently tried to jimmy the lock on the main electrical panel that morning. It was scratched up, like someone had tried to pry it open. He assumed it was kids or maybe a tenant trying to steal power. I didn't say anything, but my stomach dropped. That door is right by the side entrance. Barely anyone uses it. You'd have to know the layout of the building to even realize it's back there. I started thinking about that note again. We know where you live. It wasn't just a threat. It was proof. Proof that someone had scoped the building, enough to pick a vulnerable spot. The breaker room controlled every unit. If they wanted to mess with me, cutting the power would be a good place to start. I checked the lock on my apartment door twice that night. Then I pushed a chair under the knob, like that would actually stop someone if they really wanted in. I debated calling the cops, but what would I even say? Hi, yes, I bought drugs illegally online, and now someone from the dark web is stalking me. It sounded insane. I couldn't even prove anything had happened beyond that stupid note. And there was still part of me, some irrational part, that hoped it was just a scare tactic, a bluff. But then, the next night, around 3:40 a.m., I woke up to a loud pop, the kind of sound that jerks you straight out of sleep. My apartment was dark, pitch black. I checked my phone. No signal, no Wi-Fi. I got out of bed and looked out the window. Nothing. The whole building was out, every single unit. I stood there in the dark, frozen, trying to convince myself it was just a coincidence. A blackout. Maybe a transformer blew. But deep down, I didn't believe that. I lit a candle and walked around my apartment, every creak in the floor sounding like thunder in the silence. I couldn't hear anything from the neighbors. No TVs, no footsteps, no voices. Just this heavy, unnatural stillness, like the building itself was holding its breath. I went to the door, looked through the peephole. The hallway light was dead, but something moved. Just a flicker, like someone passing through the shadows, slow and deliberate. I backed away and locked the deadbolt again. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room with a baseball bat I kept under the bed, staring at the door. As soon as daylight broke, the power came back on, just like that. I didn't hear any trucks outside, no workers, nothing. I called the leasing office later and they said they were aware of an unscheduled outage, but didn't have any details. The electric company didn't list anything either. Mr. Weaver had no answers. He just shrugged and said, "It happens sometimes." I could tell he didn't believe that. That same week, I broke my lease, paid the penalty and moved out. Packed everything in one night and left before the sun came up. I never logged back into that marketplace. Never touched anything off the deep web again. I threw out the laptop I used and bought a new one in cash. I even changed my number and had my mail forwarded to a P.O. box. It sounds extreme, I know, but after that night, I couldn't risk it. I kept thinking, if they could get to the breaker room without anyone noticing, what else were they capable of? What if I hadn't woken up? What if the power hadn't come back? It's been 4 years now. I live in a different state, different job, different everything. Nothing weird has happened since. But sometimes I still think about that note. The wording. You owe us for trust. It wasn't about money, it was about control. About reminding me that I invited them in the second I clicked confirm purchase. That I opened the door and they just walked through. If you're reading this and thinking about doing something similar, don't. Whatever you think you're getting, it's not worth what you're giving up. Because once they know where you live, it's already too late. I'm not proud of this, and I've never talked about it in full before. I'm only sharing it now because it still haunts me, and honestly, I don't know what else to do with the guilt. Back in 2019, I had just dropped out of college. I was 21, living in a dingy 2-bedroom apartment in Dayton, Ohio, crashing on a stained couch that reeked of weed and old sweat. My roommate Chase was dealing with his own mess, jobless, aimless, and high most of the time. We both joked about how rock bottom would at least mean we'd hit something. That's when the job showed up. It came through a friend of a friend, one of those shady group chats where people share gigs that don't ask questions, just pay well. I didn't think much of it at first. I'd done some dumb things for money before, delivered mystery packages, sold fake essays, you name it. But this one was different. The message just said, remote assistant needed. Simple reposting tasks. Deep web access required. Pays instantly via Bitcoin. That last part hooked me. The guy who referred me, Nick, said he'd already made a couple grand. Just post what they send you, he told me. Don't even need to read it. It's just weird nerd crap. At the time, I was desperate. I had no car, no savings, and a phone screen so cracked it gave me splinters. So I emailed the address Nick gave me. The response came the next morning. A welcome message, instructions on how to access a specific deep web board through Tor, and a Bitcoin wallet preloaded with $200 just for joining. That was more money than I'd seen in weeks. My only job was to repost some ads on a few forums, download files they provided, and keep a spreadsheet of where I'd posted. Everything was encrypted, like weird .onion links and .7z files with password-protected folders. I didn't open anything. I didn't want to. I told myself it was just a sketchy marketing company or something illegal but not evil. At first, it felt weirdly easy. I'd wake up, open my laptop, follow their exact instructions, and within minutes I'd get paid. I started making real money, like hundreds per week. Enough to buy groceries without checking my balance first. I even got a cheap car off Craigslist and finally moved into a studio apartment on my own. The messages from the client were always polite and vague, like some distant IT guy. They called themselves Darian and never signed their emails with a real name. I didn't care. As long as the money showed up, I didn't ask anything. And honestly, that was my biggest mistake. A few months in, the tone of the tasks changed slightly. I started getting more complex instructions, like reposting ads in very specific time windows, or changing file names before uploading them. There were weird rules, too. One time, Darian told me to make sure one of the folders was posted under a thread titled B3 Remnant on a forum I'd never seen before. The thread was full of gibberish, coded text, strange usernames, symbols. But again, I told myself it was just some paranoid group trying to keep their stuff secret from competitors or the government. I never opened the files, and I never clicked on anything unless I was told to. I didn't want to know. I was making almost $200 a week just posting links and following instructions. But there were moments, little flashes of unease. One day I accidentally opened one of the folders before I'd finished uploading it. The file was just numbers, hundreds of folders named with dates, times, and strings of characters. No images, no readable text, just data. But something about it felt off. It was sterile and cold in a way I can't explain. Another time, I clicked into a forum I wasn't supposed to browse and saw someone using my same post titles in other threads. Stuff I had uploaded hours earlier, mirrored by other accounts. It felt like I was part of something bigger, but not in a good way. Like I was helping build something invisible and I didn't know what it did. I asked Darian once, half joking, "Hey man, none of this is like illegal, right?" The response came 10 minutes later. "Stick to your tasks and don't get curious. You're doing fine." That was it. Cold and sharp, not like their usual tone. I stopped asking questions after that, but that night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the file I'd opened, the mirrors, the codes. It was like that paranoid itch you get when you feel like you're being watched. Only this time I wasn't being watched. I was participating. And for the first time since I started, I didn't feel in control anymore. Still, I didn't stop. The money was too good. I kept posting. I stopped looking. I kept my head down. For a while, everything went quiet again. No weird folders, no changes. Then one morning, early January 2020, I woke up to a knock at my door. Not a neighbor, not a delivery. It was loud, precise, rhythmic. I peeked out the peephole and froze. Two guys in plain clothes. One flashed a badge. "FBI, we need to talk." I opened the door with my heart pounding so hard I thought they'd hear it. They were calm, almost too calm. One of them introduced himself as Agent McDonough. The other didn't speak much. They asked if they could come in. I let them. It was like watching myself from outside my body. They didn't yell or threaten, they just asked questions. "Do you recognize this email? Did you use this IP address on this date? Have you ever accessed the following forums?" I remember my mouth went completely dry. It was like every casual click I'd made, every folder I uploaded without thinking, had built a case I didn't even know existed. I asked what this was about. Agent McDonough didn't answer at first. Then he said very calmly, "One of the files you reposted contained materials linked to a known child exploitation ring." I felt like throwing up right there. I remember stammering, saying I never opened the files, that I didn't even know what was in them, that I was just reposting stuff I was told to. But they already knew that. They said I wasn't the target of the investigation. I was what they called a digital mule, someone who relays data so the original source disappears into noise. They didn't arrest me, but they took my laptop. They said they'd be in touch. That was 3 years ago. I never heard from them again. But that one sentence, "Your IP is forever tied to this case," never left my mind. It's a stain I can't scrub off, like being marked without a scar. After that, I fell apart. I moved back in with my mom in Akron and deleted every trace of my online identity. I stopped using crypto, deleted my old accounts, even changed my name legally 2 years later when I couldn't get a job because every background check made people ghost me. You don't bounce back from that kind of label. Even if you're innocent, even if it wasn't your intent, people hear FBI, child exploitation, digital trail, and that's it. Game over. No one wants to hear the rest. And honestly, I don't blame them. I still have nightmares sometimes. I see folders with names that don't mean anything, but I wake up drenched in sweat like they're radioactive. I see emails with clean, empty language that somehow feel threatening. I hear that knock on the door and my stomach flips, even when it's just a package delivery. I know I'm not the only one who's fallen for easy money online, but maybe I was one of the lucky ones. I got out. I still don't know who Darian really was. Their email disappeared. Their posts were all deleted. But I live every day knowing I helped carry something vile, something evil, without even knowing it. And I'll never be able to undo that.